Well, to help us understand what's at stake economically and politically in this election, I'm joined by Nelson Wiseman. He's the director of the Canadian Studies Program and professor of political science at the University of Toronto. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So give us an idea, just how has Canada's economy fared under Trudeau and what sort of policies were successful?
Well, the economy's done quite well, but I don't think the government has been a major actor. Our economy's heavily tied to the United States, which about 75% of Canadian exports, between 75 and 80%, go to the United States, and most imports to Canada are from the United States. One of the reasons we see good economic numbers is because there's been a housing boom in Canada, especially in the Toronto area and in Vancouver, and those numbers feed into the gross domestic product every time a house is bought and sold, and prices have been going up. What hasn't been really going up is wages, and I think that's not nearly as much as economic growth. But the economy's been doing well. As you heard, low unemployment, reasonable growth. Canada is heavily dependent on commodities, and that's been up and down. But on the whole, quite well. There's also a growing, burgeoning tech sector. And now we have legalized marijuana, although that sector hasn't been doing as well as was projected.
So then in terms of shortcomings, are people able to separate Trudeau's shortcomings from the shortcomings that they have with the government itself?
Yes, well, Trudeau's image was very much hurt by a scandal that broke here in February dealing with a large engineering company that has a global presence, SNC-Lavalin, which was charged with fraud and bribery. And Trudeau tried, and his minions, to intervene in the judicial process. When that was exposed, that weakened Trudeau. And also what weakened him is he lied. He claimed that the stories that there was undue pressure put on the Attorney General of Canada were false, and they were absolutely not false. And Trudeau was also found in violation of conflict of interest laws by Canada's Ethics Commissioner. So this hurt the Trudeau brand, the Trudeau image of transparency, of openness, of doing politics in a different and more positive way.
So then as Canadians sit around the coffee table, then looking at the two parties, the two leading parties, how much do the economic platforms reflect what everyday Canadians and businesses truly care about?
Well, quite frankly, I don't think issues have mattered that much in this election, including economic issues. I think it's been largely around trust, focusing on the leader of the Liberal Party. And the other one issue I would raise is the Conservatives are fighting a carbon tax that the Liberals have introduced. So they've been pressing at every opportunity to claim if they get elected, they will repeal that tax, which I believe they will do. They first have to get elected. So we'll see. The other big issue is pipelines. There hasn't been a millimeter of pipeline built in this country, I'd say, in the last 15 years. The former Conservative government was unsuccessful. The current Liberal government hasn't succeeded yet, even though it has bought a major pipeline. And the hope is that there will be an outlet to the Pacific Ocean so that the landlocked resources of Alberta, oil and gas, will have a market in the Asia field. Right now, all our oil is being exported to the United States, and there isn't enough pipeline capacity, so a lot of it is simply transported on train, which isn't nearly as safe or environmentally sensitive as pipelines.
You did bring up this issue of trade. So how much of frictions over the USMCA trade deal and US-China trade frictions, how much has that impacted the Canadian economy as well as sentiment about Trudeau in terms of how he's handled it?
The China-US trade dispute is affecting the global economy, so it has some effect on Canada. I'd say a bigger issue in Canada is actually trade relations with China. Because a Chinese executive of Huawei is being held, which subject to extradition extradition to the United States, and we don't know how that trial will go. The Chinese government has arbitrarily grabbed a couple of Canadians and is holding them in quite severe conditions. Plus, they're using muscle. They've ceased importing Canadian canola seed, and Canada's taking China to the WTO on that issue, and they haven't been importing pork the way they did in the past. So China's exercising pressure, it thinks, is going to work on Canada, but I don't think it fully appreciates how independent our judicial system is. It's quite unlike China.
All right, well, we'll certainly have to leave that there. Thank you so much, Nelson Wiseman, there, Director of the Canadian Studies Program and Professor of Political Science at the University of Toronto.